Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. We are proudly presented by SPI Logistics, and I am your host, Blythe Brumleve. I'm happy to welcome in Dan Cicerchi. He is the GM and VP of Transportation Management Solutions over at Descartes, and we're going to be talking about overall freight market, how technology and ocean shipping has a trickle-down effect into the wider freight market. We're entering in peak season, so there's a lot of moving parts going on. So Dan, welcome into the show. Excited to dive in.
Great. Thanks for the invitation, Blythe. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Now, you have a very extensive background within the freight industry. Of course, co-founding MacroPoint, but I'm curious as to what happened before MacroPoint. How did you get involved in the freight space, which I think is always an interesting story?
Sure. So probably like lots of people, I didn't start out in the freight business. My partner, Bennett Adelson, and I started a tech consulting company. And so we were doing technology consulting, working for companies building custom solutions. And then around 08, 07, 08, we wanted to diversify and create a recurring revenue platform. I don't know that SaaS was even a term back then. And we piloted a few things, but MacroPoint ended up being one of the pilots that we had, and we work closely with a couple of key customers, and really the rest is history. It took off like a rocket ship, and we went with it.
Oh, that's interesting. So you had a few companies maybe in your portfolio of services,
Yep.
And this was the one that worked. And so, what was I guess sort of that? I guess that catalyst of starting the company was the early signals of it being successful. But then how did you sort of move it to continuously sort of evolve over the years? Because I think for a lot of businesses, especially in the freight tech landscape today, it's, there's the moniker of like, oh, are you VC backed or are you going to be a startup? And, who's going to really be successful? So I'm curious as to how you obviously you chose the business, but how you decided to grow it.
Yeah, I mean, we bootstrapped. Bennett and I funded it ourselves. Our initial inclination, though, for MacroPoint was actually to build an ELD device on a consumer-grade phone. So we were going to be kind of OmniTrax on a phone. And we had probably 400 or 500 units out in the market, but we kept hearing customers say, that's not really a problem for us. We have, Qualcomm or OmniTrax, but if you could help do that to the freight we put on other people's trucks, that's what we're interested in. So ultimately we pivoted. And as any good, I think, business entrepreneur, you really got to listen to your customers, understand where their real problems are, and lean in. And then that's what we did. We took every dollar we brought in and pushed it right back into the business, and really had our payment models, our billing models were supporting the cash flow of the business. So we encourage customers to pre-buy, quote unquote, deposit money in the account that really helped fund our ongoing growth. So we didn't have to take on VC money.
Wow. So it sounds like you did what every good marketer does, and that is listen to your customers and then create those additional solutions on an ongoing basis. It sounds like the customer first priority, what has always been a priority for MacroPoint.
Totally. I mean, we have no ego in telling customers what they need. I think listening to what they need and coming up with innovative ways to solve that is really the secret sauce that we hit in, and there's lots of freight tech businesses in the space that have done the same thing. And it really, again, aligning on what is the real problem, and then innovate around how do you solve that.
And so what was the point that you decided, or maybe it was, Descartes coming to you, that you said, well, I think it's time to make the next jump, to make the next move, instead of being bootstrapped, partner up with a bigger company that can allow us to grow even more. What did that process sort of look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly had lots of opportunities to work with other private equity firms, and we did take on a year and a day before the Descartes sale a private equity partner in Susquehanna, and they were great because we saw the opportunity and we needed to lean in and spend to really capture that. And then Bennett and I decided that you know the opportunity is bigger than kind of the fork in the road of, do we continue to dump more into the business? I mean, we're Midwest. We have to be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
We never tried to lose lots of money quickly. And then, the Descartes folks, it was just a natural kind of transition. We saw the global network of sellers and customers. I mean, Descartes has 24,000 customers globally, and we were excited to get to those customers fast, and that gave us the opportunity to do that.
I'm curious as to how, sort of, tracking technology within the US, I think is kind of a given, but is this may be like an ignorant question, but, overseas or maybe in other countries, how are they receptive to this kind of technology? Is it a little bit more of a sell, or is it maybe an easier sell than it is to maybe like the US market?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the EU has laws that make it sometimes a little bit more difficult, although we see California and other states really mirroring, I think, with the EU on that. I think they're just as receptive. I mean, early days of MacroPoint, after dinner, I would call drivers every night to get them to install the MacroPoint app, and I
Oh, that's
learned
interesting.
I learned what their frustrations were. We certainly heard good, bad, and everything in between about MacroPoint in the early days. But at the end of the day, drivers are I think similar regardless of the geography, in that they don't want to be bothered. They're open to sharing updates with their customers, and they don't want to receive phone calls at 2 a.m. from God knows who, asking them where they are and when they're going to be there. So once we broke through the communication of to the carrier and to the driver, here are the problems we're trying to solve for you. It expedited the deployment for sure.
Do you think a lot of those same concerns from the early days of MacroPoint still exist today, or is it a sort of just a similar challenge that you're trying to explain that this is ultimately, for the betterment of everybody, that you can have this kind of technology at your fingertips?
It's come a long way. We don't have the challenges that we did in the early days. Um, and I think because drivers know, in terms of how we build our app and our tech, we give them the ability to protect their privacy. We care about that as much or more than any other data element in our system. We've built a nice brand name and trust with the long tail of small carriers and drivers throughout North America, and have grown from there. So that's been good.
So
No
talk.
more after dinner phone calls for me.
Yeah, I imagine that the customer research, you have a little bit more help in the customer research
Yeah,
department. Now,
yes, for sure.
when you join Descartes and you have access to this extended team now, I was surprised to learn, because I was listening to your interview with Dooner on What the Truck, and that because typically after a company is acquired, the staff doesn't stay around, definitely not the leadership, but that's the reverse for you guys. What was sort of that transition like, that you said to yourself, I'm going to stick around, I'm not going to just take the check and run?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, in full transparency, didn't expect to be around. Um, but I love what I do. I love the people I work with. I think we care about each other, and we still feel like it's a mission and a problem we're solving, and a huge still opportunity for innovation in front of us. And you put all those things together, and I think good people want to stay on the bandwagon. And then we've gotten great people post acquisition to join, that's helped keep the business accelerating in growth and capability.
And now with MacroPoint, how has I guess the technology evolved over the years? Because I remember working at an asset-based freight brokerage, 12 years ago, and we were talking about this new technology that we had in MacroPoint. So I'm curious as to how it's evolved over the years since then.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we started, we were really starting with triangulation of a cell phone. So working with the cell carriers to really give us the data once the driver has opted in. We've since evolved away from that, and we have now a mobile app deployment where there's over 1 million drivers that use that app. We have an enormous ELD connective infrastructure. So every major ELD solution in North America and the EU we're connected to. And so that gives our carriers the opportunity to, within a minute, do a self-activation and onboarding to the MacroPoint network, which that's really new in our business. And then, we connect to the super regional and major carriers through APIs.
And so, as we transitioning a little bit to some of the other offerings that Descartes offers, and that you mentioned in our show notes, the advanced ocean tracking. And I was watching FreightWaves the other day, and so they had mentioned, this trickle down effect of ocean shipping and how it affects really the rest of, sort of the freight market, especially in the United States. We're entering peak season, so I'm curious as to having access to these other tools. What perspective do you have on what's going to go on during this current peak season, which is maybe the first quote unquote normal one we've had since 2019?
Yeah, I mean, and we just released some research on cargo volumes. I think last month matched 2019. So we're kind of, if we take out the crazy peaks in COVID, we're now back to about where we were in 2019. So, so we're seeing, certainly our customers are seeing pricing kind of normalizing for container shipping. I think the awareness, though, for congestion, the impacts that has on our customers' downstream businesses are higher than ever. And so we give our customers the ability to, and those customers are freight forwarders, they're shippers, and they're freight brokers. At the end of the day, they want to know, the one question is, when should I send a truck to pick up the container? That's the question they need to answer. And so what we give them is the ability to visualize. We predict, we take terminal data, ocean shipper data, AIS data, put it all together. We're integrated with the U.S. Customs Service, so we can kind of pull together and tell you in real time when that container's been custom released, when it's arrived at port, when its last free day is. So there's lots of information that we try to pull together, overlay some dynamic predictions, and then communicate that out to our customers to know essentially when to go pick up that container.
That's a perfect segue into sort of the tech side of this conversation that I wanted to have with you, because you mentioned on one of those previous interviews that there are those who have the data and then there are those who know how to use it. What are some examples of usable data in freight that you think that folks should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that's changed in the last 10, 12 years is the amount of data in the industry. Tons of it. I mean, we have data on everything.
I think,
well, it is for sure. I think the innovations now are really around harnessing kind of how do we make the data better? We do a lot of machine learning around improving truck IDs, right? So what truck should we track? And, the customer might get a bad truck number from the carrier. We do a lot of machine learning around solving for that and saying, no, this is the good truck that should be assigned for that load, right? Or if we think going back to ocean, here's the last free day. And can we then start to apply alerts to customers on the last free day, right? When has it been, like I said, custom released? We do a lot around predicting arrivals, but the raw materials, as I've said before, the real-time location updates and event updates really are the underpinnings for all the awesome insights that you can glean related to detention, demurrage, performance of carriers, performance for your customers, performance on each consignee. I mean, there's tons of insights you glean once you have those raw materials. We feel like we've carved out a differentiated capability to really get at that raw material data.
Super interesting, because there was another quote that I heard you say, the golden rule of carrier management. Can you explain what that is and why it's so important?
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is something we do in my family too, is, it's not about treating others how you want to be treated, but you treat others how they want to be treated, right? And when we think about our carriers, they're different, right? We have a great, awesome owner-operator base that leverage MacroPoint to find available loads, to share location updates. Well, they have a different set of needs and expectations. And then you get into the mom and pop and mid-sized trucking companies, and then you get to the JB Hunts and Schneiders. Like, that spectrum of expectations are different, and we need to understand that, realize that, and treat people differently based on how they want and need to be treated.
What are some of those differences between some of the, the owner operators versus the larger carriers? I would imagine, maybe budgetary concerns, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think capabilities to share their information, right? So we have, take Schneider. They do a fantastic job and have technical capabilities to give good real-time API-based data. And so you have these high-tech, market-leading companies like Schneider. And then we have a lot of small companies that they really need lots of help. They need easy ways to share their trucks data with their customers, but they don't have a tech staff. They don't have a lot of time to manage integrations and things like that. So we rolled out a carrier self-activation platform where they can log in and within a minute or two onboard their carrier, their trucks into our network and share location data just for the shipments that they're on for customers.
Oh, that's super interesting. Now, there's so much news. I mean, especially like obviously the convoy closure announced today is big, probably the biggest story or one of the biggest stories in freight all year long. And it's bringing up this sort of heated debate around like the value of digital brokerages and, where they could have, possibly failed and where others succeed. And I think ultimately, it makes some people scared of adopting technology, where I think logistics just at its heart is always going to be a relationship-driven business. So how do you balance sort of tech adoption or how do you think about sort of tech adoption and the relationship aspect? Because it feels like that you're very focused or have always been very focused on the relationship side of things.
Yeah, for sure. And the convoy, I mean, I'm sorry to see, I think I'm sure mistakes were made. I don't know enough about their business, but technology wasn't the problem, right? I mean, we think about risk, right? And every company needs to apply their understanding of risks and the opportunity against those risks. And there's always winners and losers, but I applaud them for taking the risks, and it'll create more opportunity in the long run for people there's great people that work in that business today that will be great people tomorrow that are available to work in lots of other businesses.
Very true.
So that's good, but it is relationship. Technology will never replace that. I think we look for the high friction areas in our customers' businesses that are low value, and we automate those. And then the outcome is better relationships, right? So our carrier sales reps our account managers spend more time talking to carriers about lanes that they would actually care about because they have better data in front of them, right? But it's not about automating out those interactions. I think we're a long way away from that.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of these technology solutions, they're allowing you to get some time back so that your best employees can spend that time, that extra time that they have now building those relationships. Is that I would imagine that that's a safe assumption for the MacroPoint team for you guys.
100%. 100%. Free people up to do more value added activities. And I don't think AI or any other fancy terms you want to throw in can automate good relationships. That when there's a problem, everybody makes mistakes. Feeling that there's a person on the other end that cares about your business that you can call, I think that will be important 10, 20, 100 years from now.
Are there any areas in freight that you think technology can still solve?
Totally. Um, you know, the there's still a lot of paperwork that moves manually. I think, and there's guys like Highway that are doing a great job of really trying to find the bad actors more quickly, to save some of our customers. I think, EDI. If you would have told me 15 years ago that EDI would be as prevalent as it is today, it's still growing. I run an EDI platform inside of Descartes. We manage 6 billion messages a year, I think, and
Wow.
growing. And so there's lots of opportunity for innovation, for sure. I mean, we think about our capacity platform, really thinking about who's the right carrier and giving carriers more data on what the right lane is for them, both economically and logistically. How do we take carbon out of the industry, reducing deadhead? I mean, like those are the exciting things that me and my team are still thinking about and seeing ways to innovate on.
And we're obviously in a very tight market. There's we just mentioned Convoy is one of them. There's a lot of companies that unfortunately are going to have to close for this market to sort of reset and rebalance itself. What advice would you, as you ran a startup for years and you're a very successful business for years. What advice would you give to other companies that are facing sort of that dilemma of how do we balance innovation and also just focusing on our core fundamentals?
Well, I mean, I think profit is the oxygen for a business. And if you lose sight of that, and especially in a rising rate environment, the cost of capital goes up. You could find yourself in a really bad spot. So focusing in on, am I solving important problems for my customers? And am I doing that in a profitable way so I can reinvest in getting the next customer, hiring the next great employee that's going to help us grow? I mean, those are really what I think separates the successful entrepreneurs. And you don't always make the right decisions, but having dry powder in a profitable business where you're solving real problems is never going to go out of style.
Absolutely. Now, what's next on the sort of the product roadmap for you guys over at MacroPoint, Descartes, all that good stuff?
Well, we have our innovation forum for our customers coming up November 1st and 2nd, where we have our product managers, our customer success teams, and some of our thought leaders are going to be talking about really just that. I think the quick flyover in terms of what we're seeing if I want to pick MacroPoint, a lot of, again, more automation and enablement for carriers. A lot of things that we're doing in the European markets and South American markets. We're seeing tons of growth in Mexico as we're seeing some reshoring or nearshoring happening. Innovations around kind of more predictions. We just rolled out our new UI for MacroPoint. So we kind of 2 years in the making, we've been looking at and working on kind of the new experience for our customers. So lots of our big customers never use our system; they just connect via API. But our mid and small customers, they live in our platform, and we're excited about some of the innovations and the notification automation, and there are really lots of cool things that our customers are excited about, and quite frankly, have been asking for.
Is there anything that I didn't ask that you think is important to mention?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think, look, I'm excited, proud to be a part of an awesome, kind of stumbled into the freight industry,
I think
but
we all did.
proud to, yeah, exactly. But, proud to be a part of the industry, working alongside some real luminaries, and I appreciate the logistics leaders, the Shelley Simpsons of the world, that really are out front leading. Good times or bad, I think are good leaders in our industry. Aaron Van Zeeland over at Schneider, all these people that I think we appreciate in terms of, if I look back, kind of the journeys that we've been on, and we've been successful because of great people like that. I mentioned Ed Wadle. I mean, Ed was he's at ArcBest. He was really kind of one of our first customers that helped us really identify a really important problem to solve that became what MacroPoint is today. So just humbled and proud to be a part of that. And I know I speak for the broader team that, we've been at this for 13, 14 years, and we're still as excited as ever about the innovations in front of us.
Absolutely. I mean, I know there's a lot of tough times going on for people right now in the market, but there's a lot of innovation that happens when everything is sort of burned to the ground. Things got to rise from those ashes, and only a lot of the stronger and newer visions are going to come to light after that happens. So, Dan, appreciate your time today. Where can folks follow you, follow more of your work?
So, I mean, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the social tool of choice that I use. MacroPoint.com, Descartes.com. Love to hear feedback, thoughts, ideas for our next innovation.
Absolutely. Thank you again for your time. And I'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes just to make it easy for folks to check out.
That'd be great. Thanks, Blythe.